Good afternoon, Missoula. All of our friends that are under the canopy, do you want to join us so we have more people to listen to our wonderful speakers? So for those of you that are here, first of all, I want to extend deep gratitude that you have joined us today. I know that a lot of people are feeling pretty burnt out when it comes to activism and rallies, and there's so much to do that there's a high point of saturation. So I really appreciate everyone's attendance here. We may be small, but we're mighty. And I'm going to ask you guys to use your voices with me today as we move through our healthcare rally. So we have a great lineup of speakers to talk with you today about what this healthcare legislation actually means for people in Missoula, for people in Montana, for our small business owners, so we can put a real face to what the impacts are going to be by this legislation. But then we're also going to give you ideas as to what you can do to help prevent this legislation from going through. So before we get started, I just wanted to bring a few people up here to thank them. Alana. I guess I should introduce myself too. I'm Erin Erickson, and I started Missoula Rises, which is just a local organization committed to resistance and to protecting our citizens. Alana is actually with Missoulians for Peace and Unity, correct? Yeah. And she usually holds the peace marches every Sunday at 1 o'clock, and she's used this time to put together this healthcare rally. So we've got Alana. We have Anne over here, who has donated a ton of time doing all of the sounds. Is it ESP? ESP? Yeah, thank you to ESP for the sound system. Who else do we want to thank for? I would thank Eamon, but Eamon's not here yet, even though he was an integral part of getting this put together. Susie Orr. We're thanking all the people that really helped put this together. We had a big group. Barb Merrifield right there, if you want to raise your hand. She helped put this together. Yeah. So those people have put in a ton of time to put this together. Pam Boyd, who's one of our speakers. And I just want to make sure that everyone knows this is all volunteer. This is community. None of us are paid. I'm assuming that none of you are paid protesters out there. If you are, raise your hand. Oh, Amon's paid. But really, this exemplifies putting together this rally. I mean, we all do this after hours, after our kids are in bed, after dinners are made, in the mornings, on our lunch hours. This really exemplifies community. Our speakers that are coming up here, they're not paid. They're here volunteering to tell you their experiences. So this is community, and that's the one thing I want us to think about as we move through every day through this administration, is that we have each other. We have community. Each of us individually has a voice. When you use your voice every day, it becomes a collective community that pushes back against legislation that is harmful to our citizens. So I want you guys to think back when the healthcare legislation first tried to go through the House. What happened? We were all on top of it. We were all on it. We were calling every day. We were writing letters to the editor. We were calling, faxing, emailing, writing. What happened? It didn't go through. That first time it didn't go through. They did not vote it through. And we saw Senator Daines shift on his position too. I know that it's tiring. I know we're getting exhausted, but we have to keep that up. I know you guys get it because you're here, but spread the word. And as people get tired, there's ways that they can resist without having to come to rallies and expend a bunch of time. One way to do it is through Amplify. There's an app that you can download on your phone called Amplify, and it provides you with daily actions. We give you the phone numbers to call. We give you the scripts. If you want to download Amplify, go to MissoulaRises.com, MissoulaRises.com, and it will give you instructions on how to download that app. After you download it and you start using it daily, because we're going to make resistance a part of our everyday routine, after you do that, I challenge you to find 5 friends and get them to download it. If they're not comfortable doing that, they can go to our website or they can go to Indivisible Montana website, and there's written out actions. So if you would rather fax or email, you don't have to call, you don't have to use an app on a phone, you can use the web instead. We make it easy for you to do it every single day. That's what we need to do, is make it part of our daily routine. So before we get started with our speakers, because it's such a beautiful day, I want everyone just to take a second, take a deep breath, lift your face right up to the sky, and just enjoy the Montana spring. This is why we live here. So let's take this energy, let's flow it out in a positive direction to make change for our community. So our first speaker we have today is Beth. And Beth has baby B with her. Does B want to stay on your back, or do you want? Okay. We have an older B who will help with baby.
Yeah, big B and little B can hang out.
So I'll just introduce Beth real quick. Beth is a small business owner here in Missoula. You may have heard of her business, Tandem Donuts. They're down at Farmers Market, and they make excellent French toast donuts. But she has a small business in Missoula and has a personal story that she's going to share that shows the way that healthcare issues have impacted her family specifically, including her daughter, as well as her small business.
Hi, everybody. So yeah, my name is Beth Gerline, and like a lot of Missoulians, I have 2 full-time jobs. Could be a little lower. Thanks. So yeah, like Erin said, my husband and I own Tandem Donuts. It's a very small wholesale bakery in Missoula. And I'm also the mom of an almost 2-year-old daughter. Both of those are really demanding jobs, as I'm sure a lot of you know. Not a lot of time off, long hours, but they're super rewarding. And they would be literally impossible without adequate, accessible, and truly affordable healthcare. Something that we've been able to get through a combination for us of expanded Medicaid and CHIP, the Children's Health Insurance Program, both of which are under threat right now with the current House legislation. So my husband and I graduated from college just as the 2009 recession was hitting, which was a great timing on our part. So we had a hard time finding jobs that could both pay our household bills and pay our debt, our student debt. And the jobs that we did find just didn't provide health insurance. And so, like a lot of people in their 20s, we just went without health insurance for a long time. And so, even though I've always worked, even during college, I went my whole entire adult life until the implementation of the Affordable Health Care Act without health insurance. I just didn't have it. And that one piece of the puzzle, the way the ACA made affordable insurance accessible for us, really was a game changer. It meant that we were free from this sort of cycle of desperately chasing any job that might offer insurance, regardless of other factors like pay, hours, location, whether it was in our field, if it was something we wanted. You know, and it meant that we could start thinking about having a child, which was something that I always desperately wanted and truly spent my entire 20s thinking was going to be out of reach for me. And so after the implementation of the ACA, we decided to pursue this kind of quintessential American dream, to become our own bosses and start our own business. And it's been a lot of work. We started as a stand at the Clark Fork Farmers Market 5 summers ago. And we're still there, but now we're also a year-round wholesale business with 5 employees and a commercial kitchen. The ACA gave us the freedom and the confidence to do that. It literally encouraged us to start a business. We're still really small, and we're still putting all of our profit back into our business, which means that in addition to running the bakery and raising our daughter, my husband works a day job that we're definitely grateful for, but that does not provide insurance. And so, you know, we are parents now, and we can't go back to just forgoing health insurance, which means that if these programs went away or were underfunded and cut, we would probably have to close our business. So for us, the ACA, Medicaid expansion, and CHIP are part of our success story as a family. They helped us start our business, a business that now employs 5 people, and they allowed us to have a child and start a family. We couldn't have had my daughter without health coverage. And in a few years, when we're a bigger business and we're a more, financial success story, we will say that the ACA was part of this success story. We'll be able to say that we achieved our dreams because these programs gave us the freedom to pursue them. But if they're pulled out from under us now, our business will likely die and our employees will lose their jobs and we'll go back, to square one. And that's why I believe that truly pro-family and pro-small business policy has to guarantee health insurance, health care that is affordable, that is high quality, and that is consistent. And so that's something that's being threatened right now by politicians who pay lip service to folks like me, Montanans like me, and my family, who rely on these programs. And then they turn around and support legislation that actively threatens our health and livelihood, because that's what this current legislation does. So I hope that they're paying attention to what we say here today, because we're certainly paying attention to them. Thank you.
Thank you, Beth and Bee. And that really is the key, is that we have to stay on top of our legislators. Right now, we're in the process of a special election, and so what that means is that we don't have anyone in the House of Representatives to contact, and that's where the legislation goes first. They already voted it through. We know that. It may be going back for another vote due to some rating issues, so it might be going back to the House for another vote, and at this point in time, we don't have anyone in the House, but what we can do, we can call our senators, and specifically Senator Daines, and the reason it's important to reach out to him is because he is a more conservative voice. And so if he is able to support that legislation not passing, that means something. His voice carries weight on issues like this. So every day you need to be calling him, and you need to let him know it's not just bad for individuals, devastating for individuals, it's terrible for our economy. It is bad for Montana's business economy if this legislation passes. The other group that it will adversely impact in a large way is the tribal groups. And so to that end, we have Anna Whiting Sorrell as our next speaker. Oh, there you are. You're already up here. Anna is the Director of Operations, Planning, and Policy for the Tribal Health Department at the Confederated Salish and Kootenai Tribes of the Flathead Nation. She brings over 30 years of experience to the healthcare field, including work in tribal, federal, and state positions. In 2015, Montana Governor Steve Bullock appointed Anna to the State Innovation for Healthcare Committee, and we are simply honored to have Anna join us today and speak.
I thought about bringing the baby that's with me today, but I don't know, it would have been harder to roll him up here, but he certainly is a part of my life. Well, good afternoon, and it is so good to be in the beautiful Montana sun, which we haven't seen for months, right? And so I'm glad we're all sitting there enjoying the sun. I have this belief, I'm going to try not to cry, that when you find a penny, it's from heaven, and someone is watching over you, and they're with you when you find it. And I walked up here, and there was a penny, and I always tell my girl, Kate, who's with me, that it's my mom with me. And so here I know my mom is with me today. The rhetoric around healthcare has really ramped up, but sometimes I think it's really overshadowed. I mean, we're today here to talk about healthcare, but it's really overshadowed by the daily controversy that's coming out about Russia, or the morning tweets that we don't really know what's coming up next. And that worries me, because I don't know what is being done while we're deterred or distracted by whatever the daily controversy is. But I know for those of us whose lives are tied to healthcare that we can't get distracted. We have to stay engaged. We have to stay engaged in understanding that if we are engaged in the healthcare system for ourselves and getting healthcare for ourselves, or if we're involved in making sure that healthcare is getting provided for others, Or if we're the family member who is worried about making sure that our families have access to health care. What I do understand is the most recent appeal and replace of the Affordable Care Act can't just be an afterthought. You know, what's most disturbing to me about what is being talked about in this repeal and replace or repeal and repair or whatever it is today is what some of the talk has been, what the debate has been. I'm going to ask, do any of you really think that people elect to not have health care insurance or health care coverage? No. Do you really think when elected officials and politicians are out there saying that families are choosing to not to go without health care, that is really a decision that they're making? Or that they choose to have minimal coverage or catastrophic health coverage only? They're not making that choice because that's the choice that they want to make. They're making it because it's what they have to make. They're making choices for other things. They're making choices for food or shelter or clothing or transportation. And then each night they go to bed and they pray that they don't have an incident where they need to access health care. And they wake up in the morning hoping that their child doesn't have an earache or a sore throat or something even more that would cause them to end up in bankruptcy. What I do know, it is a burden that families without health care carry every day. It is something you think about every day if you don't have health care coverage, insurance, Medicaid, Healthy Montana Kids. It's a burden that is with you every day. So I don't even begin to believe that you can convince reasonable people, the hardworking people of Montana, that these are choices that we're making freely, that this is a freedom of choice. You know, when they stand up and say, we're just letting people have freedom of choice. You know what freedom of choice in healthcare is? Freedom of choice in healthcare is when you get to choose what doctor you want to go to. When you get to choose to go get a diagnostic procedure when you think you need it. When you get to have a mammogram or a colonoscopy when you need it. When you get to go to the hospital when you need it. Not when you need to go to the emergency and when you know the outcome of whatever medical condition you may have, that the likelihood it will be more traumatic or that you may not even survive it. Freedom is getting able to continue with the therapy that you need. That is really what freedom in healthcare is all about. Freedom can't be about the ability to be able to pay. And it must not be based on the color of your skin. Here in Montana, American Indians, we earn less. When people say that women earn less, what is that, 79 cents on the dollar? As an Indian woman, it's 57 cents on the dollar. Think about that. So it's not only about what you earn, it's also about the color of your skin. What we also know about Indian health care in Montana is that we as Indian people die a generation younger. As an Indian woman, I know that I will die, or that I can expect to die at age 64. A non-Native woman, 84. An Indian man, 77. A Native man, 57. Do you know what it feels like to die a generation younger? My grandma died at 42. My mother at 57. 2 years ago, I started a medical journey of my own. I didn't have access. When I was appointed to be Governor Schweitzer's Health and Family Policy Advisor, I walked through those governor's doors and it was the first time that I had access to health care. Do you know what it's like to walk through the governor's door and know that you have to be there to get access to health insurance? My first health insurance came at that level. 2 years ago, I knew there was something wrong, and it was major. I made it through the system, but I had health insurance. But it took a whole village to help me understand how to use insurance as someone who didn't know how to use it. And it took a whole village to help the provider system to make sure that even though I was covered by Indian Health Service, that I had the ability to pay, that I had health care, health insurance, and that they could treat me. And because of that care that I got from all of you and the people in this world, I will celebrate my 60th birthday come July 1st. What I know for sure is we can't go back. Since 2005, 77,154 Montanans have gained coverage through the expanded Medicaid program where adults get access to Medicaid. Of those, 11,228 are Indians. And what I will tell you is it doesn't matter. We can't tell them we don't care. We're not going to turn our back on them, that we won't let them go back. What I know for sure is that it didn't take me one day to Google healthcare. I know it's complicated. All right, I thought it was a funny joke. Maybe it's not maybe it was complicated for him, but it's not complicated for us. We need to say, no, we're not going back. We're going to stand together. We're going to make those phone calls. We're going to vote on Thursday, and together we're going to make sure that we all have health care. It's a human right. It's a way that we end racism in this state and in this country, and together we will go forward. Thank you.
So the other key to us being a community and supporting each other, just like Anna talked about, is that it's incumbent upon us to educate our friends who aren't paying as close of attention to the news or maybe don't really understand what this legislation means. There are a lot of distractions, as Anna had pointed out, and oftentimes, especially the first time this tried to go through the House, it was just kind of slipped under the radar, and not a lot of people knew exactly what was in it, and that still remains the same today. It's imperative that we are going out and we're educating our family and our friends who may not have an understanding of what's going on with this healthcare legislation, and ensuring that they're doing their part too to help protect each other, to protect our economy and the people in our state and country. I think on that note, it's time for a chant. Is everyone up for a chant? Okay, stand up if you'd like. And because healthcare is for everyone, not just the 1%, we are going to say everybody's in, nobody's out. That's what healthcare is all about. Ready? Here we go. Everybody's in, nobody's out. That's what healthcare is all about. Come on. Everybody's in, nobody's out. That's what healthcare is all about. Come on. Everybody's in, nobody's out. That's what healthcare is all about. 2 more times. Everybody's in, nobody's out. That's what healthcare is all about. Last time. Everybody's in, nobody's out. That's what healthcare is all about. All right. We have Sarah next. Yep. So next we have Sarah Howell, and speaking of education, Sarah is the Executive Director of Montana Women Vote, and they have been a crucial mentor for Missoula Rises in terms of learning how to get out education and activism. We do a lot of work with Micah, and we're very, very grateful for their mentorship and help. And Sarah's going to talk to us about the ACA Medicaid expansion and healthcare defense work that is coming down the pipeline.
Yeah, that's great. Hi, everybody. Thanks so much for being here. I'm super excited to be here today. I'm really excited to see all of you here today. I think we're all here on this beautiful Sunday afternoon because we know that the stakes are really high in this healthcare debate that we're having right now in our country. Like Erin said, my name's Sarah Howell. I'm with Montana Women Vote. We're an organization of low-income women and families, and we've done a lot of work for a lot of years on issues around access to healthcare in the state. And most recently, that's looked like being a part of the many-year fight to expand Medicaid in Montana. Just 5 years ago, in 2012, 20% of Montanans were uninsured. 1 in 5 Montanans were uninsured. And just like Anna said, we talked to a lot of those folks during our Medicaid expansion fight. We talked to people who lost their jobs, who lost their homes, lost their savings. We talked to people who nearly lost their lives because they had no avenue to affordable quality health coverage. Today in 2017, our uninsured rate is closer to 7%. A 13% reduction in just 5 years. That is a big deal. Is a big deal. And, like Anna said, over 77,000 people got coverage through our expanded Medicaid in the last 5 years. You might also know that 124,000 kids in Montana alone have health coverage through Medicaid or CHIP. The Affordable Care Act isn't perfect. We all know that. There's things we could improve on. There's space for us to move forward. But over the last 5 years, the Affordable Care Act has done a number of really important things. It's put some regulations on the insurance companies. So insurance companies can't sell you junk insurance now, insurance that doesn't cover anything you really need or leaves you hanging out to dry if you have a medical emergency. The ACA put some protections in place, protections for people with pre-existing conditions. We've heard a lot about that lately. Protections in the form of eliminating lifetime caps or annual caps on claims that can be paid out on insurance companies. And protections around, again, what has to be covered through a list called the Essential Health Benefits. All of these things are under attack right now. But another really important thing that the Affordable Care Act did is it gave us this opportunity to expand Medicaid. Originally, Medicaid expansion was required as part of the Affordable Care Act. The Supreme Court made it optional for states, and about 2/3 of states have opted to expand Medicaid. And even with 1/3 of states rejecting Medicaid, including some big states like Texas and Florida, Medicaid expansion under the ACA is the largest expansion of Medicaid since the program started in 1965. 70 million Americans have coverage through Medicaid. In fact, it is now our nation's single largest health coverage program. I think a lot of us think of Medicaid as covering low-income adults, and that's true. Medicaid also covers children, like I just mentioned. It covers people with disabilities, covers seniors in long-term care, it covers pregnant women and other folks in some instances. And Medicaid does this while also being pretty flexible. Medicaid is a program run by states, so states get to make some decisions about how best to meet people's needs on the ground. It's effective. Care under Medicaid costs about 25% less than care under a private insurance plan. And it's pretty generous. In most cases, Medicaid provides a pretty generous benefit package. Here in Montana, Medicaid doesn't just cover those essential health benefits, it also covers dental, vision, mental health care, and more. And despite this, or maybe actually because of this, Medicaid is also very much under attack right now. Just as pre-existing conditions and regulations on insurance companies are part of the bill that was passed last month by the House, the American Health Care Act has $880 billion in cuts to Medicaid in that bill over the next 10 years. And not only does it get the funding, but it changes the shape of the Medicaid program as we know it by shifting it to what's called a block grant or a per capita cap program. So no need to get into the weeds of that necessarily at this moment, but what we should know right now is that in addition to attacking the private healthcare marketplace, The American Health Care Act is taking aim at the single largest government-run health program that we have. Now, I know that everybody here has probably already made a call to one or both of your senator's office. Now is exactly the time, just like Anna said, just like Erin said, that we need to start calling again. I want to challenge each of you for the next week to call every day. I have a table over here. I have sheets with the phone numbers of every state office of both Senators Tester and Daines. I like to call a different office every day, just shake things up a little bit. I think it's worth saying that, Senator Tester has come out with some pretty strong statements against the American Health Care Act and in support of Medicaid. And I think he deserves to hear from us that he's representing Montana values when he says that, and that we are grateful for his leadership. Senator Daines has not quite made those statements yet, and I think he also deserves to hear from us that ripping coverage away from Montanans is not a Montana value. We also, on my table over here, have postcards. If you'd like to write a postcard to either or both senators, we're happy to put a stamp on it and mail it for you. I think at the end, what we have to know is that we're likely in the coming months to see a number of different proposals. The Senate will not just take up a vote on the bill that the House passed. They're going to make some tweaks and some changes. And just like Anna said before, we have to stay focused. We have to keep our eye on the ball, and we have to demand that if any proposal has any of the following three things, that we say absolutely not. Those things are: number one, taking coverage from millions of Americans; number two, rolling back Medicaid expansion; or number three, gutting Medicaid as we know it through caps or cuts. If any of those three things is in a proposal put forth by the Senate, we absolutely won't stand for it. So I want to thank you all for coming out again today, and I hope you'll join us in taking action, not just today, but every day for as long as you can muster it in as many ways as you can. Thank you.
And if you're wanting to do something a little bit more than calling every day, reaching out to Montana Women Vote is a great way to do that. They do phone banking. I just want to give you guys a shout out, because one important initiative that they have been working on is calling women from low-income families and explaining to them what these healthcare policies mean. And that's incredibly important. The education component of this is incredibly important. So I know that Sarah just gave you a challenge, and I want to reiterate that. Number one, if you don't have Amplify, download it on your phone right now, because you can make those calls every single day. The numbers are on there. You just have to hit it. It'll automatically dial it. It's got the scripts, everything for you to do. You can go to MissoulaRises.com and get all the information on that. And then if you are a school teacher that has little children in your class that you know are going to be affected by this, or if you're a nurse and you see what's going to happen to the patients that are in there, or you work in a nursing home or represent them, I challenge you to get out there and educate people and encourage them to start being activists every day on this issue, because it is going to impact the people that we care about and that we love, and people we don't even know, but we're a community and we need to protect each other. So to that end, the next speaker we have is Burke Townsend. Did Burke come? Maybe. Okay. Burke is a retired University of Montana philosophy professor and currently works on advocacy for Missoula Aging Services and has served on the board for several years. And he's here today to talk about seniors' healthcare issues. It's nice to meet you too.
Well, Susan Kohler, who's the CEO of Aging Services, would have liked to have been here today, but she is out of town, and so she asked me to stand in for her. I'm a poor substitute and no expert on the subject, but at least I am a senior citizen. So, well, let me cut, first of all, just right to the chase. The American Health Care Act, as proposed by the House, and Trump Care, as some are now calling it, is a moral disaster. Right? It's an absolutely lousy excuse. Much more a tax cut for the rich than it is a program of health care for our U.S. citizens. But, okay, that said, why is it particularly of concern for senior citizens? Well, first of all, there are a lot of us. In Montana currently, there's something like 20% who are 65 or older, and that's projected to reach 25%, more than 25%, 1 in 4 by the year 2030. So there's a kind of a silver tsunami rolling across the country, the result of people living longer and of the bulge from the baby boom, the population reaching retirement age. So Montana in that respect is among the nation's leaders, if that's the proper term. 2013, the last numbers I saw, we were ranked number 6 in terms of the population of elderly in the state as a whole. And secondly, the elderly are much more likely to be in need of medical care than our younger folks. That's rather obvious, I think. If we take the existence of pre-existing conditions as a kind of marker of the need for serious attention from the medical care system, the Department of Health and Human Services estimates that in the population as a whole, younger than 65, pre-existing conditions range from around 20% up to perhaps as much as 50%. Depends upon exactly how you define and count it. But if you look at the age group from 55 to 64, those estimates rise from around 50% up to as much as 86% of existing conditions. And if pre-existing conditions, serious need for healthcare attention is that high among the age group 55 to 64, it can only be higher among those 65 and older. We don't see often estimates for those who are 65 or older, and that's likely because if you're 65, you're covered, right? There's Medicare. There's health insurance for those of us who are 65 or older. Now, it's true that we shouldn't just discount those from 55 to 64 as potentially counting as senior citizens. That's paying a little more attention to that in a minute, but it's certainly fair to say that 65 is a common cutoff or vision for those we count as senior status. And the American Health Care Act, Trump Care, this disaster, does not touch Medicare in terms of its benefits or the standards. So what's the problem if you're 65 or older? You got Medicare. Well, this proposed act does change the funding structure. And while it's not as bad with Medicare as with Medicaid, there's over $1 billion expected to be in reduction expected for the Medicare program over the next decade. The surtax that was imposed when Obamacare strengthened Medicare and its benefits is scheduled to disappear under this act. And that would pose a threat to Medicare's capacity to continue to provide the kinds of services and benefits that it currently does. So for those over 65, Medicare would be affected by this act in a significant way. Further, Medicare is not the only program, government program, on which those over 65 depend. As much as 12% of those over 65 enrolled in Medicare are also enrolled in Medicaid. And this is not only because they may have a disability, but as well because they need help in paying for the premiums and co-pays of Medicare. They need other services not covered by Medicare. Long-term care was mentioned here before, which is crucially important and many rely on, as well as things like eyeglasses, hearing aids, and the like. So Medicaid is an important part for seniors as well as Medicare. Further, if we do count as seniors to be concerned about, those in the age group from 55 to 64, there are still more serious threats from this act. These folks are not yet qualified, of course, for Medicare, and so they have to rely on some other form of medical insurance. And what many call the age tax under the AHCA, folks in this age group could be charged up to 5 times the rates that are charged for younger folks. And truly dramatic change in the premium charge. It's also the case that the new act, if put in place, which does seem unlikely, but we'll have to see, it allows insurance companies to charge more for those with pre-existing conditions. Get to the right spot here. And I remember years and years ago at a meeting somewhat similar to this over at the university, an elderly lady saying, at my age, who doesn't have a pre-existing condition? There are no caps under this Trump Care plan on what an insurance company could charge for someone with a pre-existing condition. The current estimates run from tens of thousands of dollars in extra charges up into the hundreds of thousands of dollars, depending upon the nature of your pre-existing condition. That means that for a senior citizen in the age group prior to any coverage by Medicare, your premiums could absolutely skyrocket as a combination of pre-existing condition and the age tax, so-called. Those kinds of increases in the premiums would probably here anyway, right? Is it back? Okay. Those sorts of increases would only further pressure the Medicaid program. Further pressure Medicaid because most folks would simply be unable to cover those kinds of costs for insurance premiums, and thus would be forced to rely on whatever might be left of Medicaid, further challenging the entire system. And I told you about the situation with the Native Americans. There isn't quite the same disproportion of the elderly in the Montana Native American population. But the healthcare needs are, as you heard, much greater. There is the Indian Health Service, the IHS, but that's chronically underfunded and inadequate to the needs. And moreover, a substantial share of the funding for the IH comes from Medicaid. And as Anna told you, many of our Native Americans currently are covered directly by Medicaid services. There was something like a 35% reduction in the uninsured rate here in Montana with the expansion of Medicaid. There's the further consideration that Montana is a rural state, and the proportion of the elderly among the rural population is greater than it is among the urban population. And rural folk tend, on average, to be sicker and poorer. So a state like Montana would see additional kinds of concerns for the elderly as a rural state as compared to, say, Connecticut. Compounding that problem, resources are scarce in the rural areas. In 2013 in Montana, out of all the primary care docs, it's not the specialists, but just 60% of the primary care docs practiced in just 5 out of our 56 counties. Rural hospitals have been challenged for some time financially, but they really were buoyed to a significant extent by the expansion of Medicaid and of insurance coverage, which has allowed many of them to stay alive. But that kind of help would disappear, as we've seen if Trump Care were to go into place. So, as you've heard with the previous speakers, and I'm sure you'll continue to hear, Trump Care has proposed the AHCA is a disaster, but I think even a greater disaster for senior citizens than for the younger folks. And then finally, turning away from my role as substitute speaker on behalf of the elderly and Montana Aging Services, it's well past time that the United States joined virtually every other economically advanced nation in the world and instituted a universal health care system. You know, there's a great variety of such systems, and the idea that all of this constitutes socialized medicine is just a bugaboo. There are a great variety of systems available. We could easily craft a universal health care system for this country that suited our values and our dispositions, and at the same time saved us money and produced better results, not just for our seniors, but for all of our citizens. Let's do it. Thank you.
That's fine. That's perfect. Okay, thank you, Burke, and we could not agree more with your last parting sentiment about single-payer health care. So I know that it's hot out there, and this is starting to be long, but we have a lot of really important and energizing speakers to come up here. I want to just say a few things before we bring up Denver. So first of all, it's clear now that we've heard from our last four speakers that this issue goes beyond party politics. This is clearly should not be a Republican-Democrat issue. This is a people issue. And we have the right to make demands of the people who represent us that they look out for us, that they take care of us. And so from here on out, every day we are going to make those demands of our members of Congress until they do the right thing and they kill that bill. So I'm going to quote one of my favorite songs from Ben Harper, and it goes like this: take your head out of your hands and clear your eyes. You have a right to your dreams and don't be denied. I believe in a better way. We have the right to health care. Every day, make the demand. So Denver's going to speak next, and I will let him introduce himself.
Thanks, Aaron. Everyone hear me? Yeah, all right. Hey, we're here today not because there's nothing else better to do. We're here because we care about each other. We're here because we're a community. Raise your hand if you've got a friend, a neighbor, or a family member that you're afraid they're going to lose their health care. Yeah, right? That's all of us. This isn't a trivial issue. This isn't a fly-by-night kind of problem. This is a permanent, serious problem. And I am so glad that we're all here and we're all tired and fed up with this lack of leadership in Washington, D.C., and we're going to do something about it. So my name's Denver Henderson. I'm an organizer with the Service Employees International Union, SEIU Local 775. We represent over 45,000 caregivers across the states of Montana and Washington. These are home care workers. These are nursing home workers. These are group home workers. They take care of the elderly and the disabled every single day. Now, you might think you know something about these folks just based on their title. What you probably don't know is that most caregivers make $9 to $12 an hour. They struggle to get full-time work. Most of them are lucky to get about 20 hours a week. They struggle to provide the very basic necessities for their families. On a regular basis, they have to choose between paying rent and putting enough food on the table to feed their kids. That's not right. If it were not for public assistance that comes from our taxpayer dollars, many of these people would not make it at all. So perhaps it goes without saying that prior to the Affordable Care Act, most caregivers did not have access to health care. That's why in 2009, we organized and we fought like hell to pass the Affordable Care Act. Now, the end product wasn't perfect. We knew it wasn't going to be perfect. Nothing as complex as healthcare reform is going to be perfect the first time around. But it started a conversation. It expanded health coverage to millions of people who did not have it previously. It set in place some basic consumer protections. And it put us on a path to fight for universal health care for every man, woman, and child in this country. Now, after the ACA became law, we had to work to fight for Medicaid expansion. We organized, and alongside with our coalition partners like Montana Women Vote, Planned Parenthood, and our brothers and sisters in labor, our members gathered signatures, they made phone calls, they wrote letters, they held rallies. They fought and they didn't stop fighting until we won. Now, none of that comes without work, none of it happens overnight, but because of that work, 77,000 people have health care today in this state that wouldn't otherwise. Let's hear it for that. Now, the Affordable Care Act not only provided health care to a lot of people, it also provided good jobs, good paying health care jobs all across the state. It provided a financial boost to rural economies and communities struggling to survive. And now all that we have gained is at risk. And it's up to us, every one of us, to stand together, to work together, and to fight to prevent that progress from being rolled back. On paper, the Republican plan, also known as the American Health Care Act, it relies on tax credits and universal health savings accounts to supposedly make health care more affordable. Don't fool yourself. This is a tax cut for the very richest amongst us. This is a tax cut for people who are already in the highest income brackets, at the same time that the federal budget purports to take away basic services like Meals on Wheels from people who deserve it and need it. That's not right. On paper, the Republican plan allows states to keep their Medicaid expansion programs. But in reality, it strips away the funding that makes that expansion feasible. On paper, the Republican plan says it will save states money. In reality, it balances the numbers by cutting out people who need care the very most. It is estimated 142,000 Montanans will lose their health coverage. As a state, we stand to lose over $800 million in ACA funding. And along with that funding, 11,000 people are going to lose their jobs. But their plans actually go much further, and other people have alluded to this as well, but I think it's critically important because Montana is an older state. We don't have the kind of tax base that a lot of Eastern and West Coast states have that can provide this kind of funding. We don't have that kind of luxury. Their plan cuts $880 billion out of Medicaid. It caps funding, it caps future funding to the states, and strips away the protections for that funding. These are funds that provide basic health care for our kids on CHIP. It provides health care for our seniors and people with disabilities, and now, thanks to Medicaid expansion, low-wage working adults. The result will be more stringent requirements for enrollment. It will mean fewer people get the help they need, and there will be less money to meet our basic obligations. At a time when 4 out of 10 American workers make less than $15 an hour, the basic minimum that economists tell us a family needs to make in order to make ends meet, this Republican Congress is hell-bent on cutting away the safety net that has protected multiple generations from poverty. Now, these are dark times, there's no doubt about it. And yes, the stakes are high. And yes, the danger is very real. But we are far from powerless, because they may have more money than us, granted. But there are 3 things that we all have. First of all, we have our votes. Decisions are made by people who show up. Montana didn't have a voice when the first health care debate came around, but this bill, one way or another, is coming back to the House. And we have a responsibility to make sure that the person who is voting for us, who is looking out for our interest, who gets to vote on our behalf, that they are paying attention to what is best for Montana and best for the American people, not corporations and not the wealthy. The election is next Thursday. Don't forget to vote. And I'll tell you something else. It's not enough to vote. Not now. The stakes are too high. We all know people, friends, coworkers, relatives. They share our same values. They share our same concern. Are they going to vote? I don't know. It's up to us to talk to them. It's up to us to remind them of what is at stake and what's important and make sure that they cast their ballot next Thursday. We also have our time. Now, change doesn't happen in a vacuum. It doesn't happen on its own, and it certainly doesn't happen overnight. But we have accomplished amazing things by working together. Working people have passed a minimum wage. Working people created Social Security. Working people created Medicaid and Medicare. And it's working people that once again must come together and must stand together to beat back these attacks. But you know, I'm also encouraged because I look around the room. I've been doing this work for about 13 years now, both on a volunteer and a paid basis, and I'm lucky and privileged to do it. But I'll tell you something. When I first started doing this work, there were people who had been doing it a long time before me. None of this is new. We are all a link in a chain. And the people who came before us, who fought those fights, they're not going away. They're still in this fight today. They're still standing up, and they're organizing, and they're mobilizing, and they're fighting back against what other people might consider to be inevitable. But I am also equally encouraged when I look around and I see new people and new faces and new groups like Big Sky Rising and Missoula Rises and so many others that are in this fight now. Because I know that if working people stand with Indian people, and we stand with students, and we stand with their seniors, if we all stand together and we work together, we can beat back these attacks. This is not inevitable. And finally, we have our voices. Now, our elected officials need to hear from us. You've heard that so many times, it's probably ingrained in your memory at this point. And one simple thing you can do, there's a lot of things you can do. There's no end to what you can do to fight back. One thing that you can do that makes an enormous difference, you make a phone call to Congress. How many people have done that? Let me see your hands if you've made a phone call to Congress. I'm seeing a lot of hands out there, right? It's not rocket science. It doesn't take a long time, but it's incredibly important. And I'm going to take 30 seconds to do something a little unorthodox. I'm not just going to tell you how easy it is. I'm going to show you. We're going to take 30 seconds to make that phone call and make our voices heard. You with me? So if you have pen and paper, I'm going to give you a number to write down or put in your cell phone. 866-426-2631. Let me say that again. 866-426-2631. This is a national hotline that our union set up to make it one step easier for us to communicate with our elected officials, one step easier to hold them accountable and make our voices heard. So you dial that number. You enter your zip code. The number is 866-426-2631.
We'll transfer you now. Thanks for making your voice heard. Please remember to tell the person who answers the phone or leave a voice message sharing your healthcare story.
We'll connect you with Steve Dane's office. We'll give you a couple different options. You press 1 to leave a message. You ever hear this?
Please be sure to leave your name, address, phone number, and a detailed message, and we'll also be touching you shortly. To make sure your message is returned, please spell your first and last name. You can also send me an email to my website, james.senate.gov.
Mr. Danes, my name is Denver Henderson. I live in Missoula, Montana at 2316 West Crescent Drive. I'm calling to ask you to vote down the American Health Care Act. There are too many people. There are too many people in Montana that depend on the ACA and depend on Medicaid expansion. Please oppose this program. Vote with Montana, do what's right, and oppose any cuts to the Medicaid program. Thank you, sir. It's just that simple, folks. It's not rocket science. It's not magic. But the power comes not in what you say, but the number of times you make the call and the number of times that you get other people to make that call with you. Now, I think there's one more thing that we need to consider, because we're not the only ones. We're not the only groups that are concerned about healthcare. We're not the only ones engaged in this fight. There's another side. There's a side that is funded by corporate interest and corporate dollars. There's a side that does not care about your kids. It does not care about your grandparents. It does not care about working people. It cares about protecting the status quo and protecting rich people from paying more in taxes. That's the only thing they're concerned about. And you know what? They're not going away. You don't see them holding rallies right now. You don't see them on the doors or in the streets. But they're raising money. And they are threatening, and they are lobbying, and they're trying to buy our senators and our congressmen votes. And they don't do it just one day. They do it every single day. We have to be that committed. We have to be that persistent, because it doesn't take one call. It takes thousands. It doesn't take one person or one letter. It takes all of us working together. But I know that if we do these things, we can win. And we will eventually win health care for every man, woman, and child in this country, and together we will make history. Thank you for joining the resistance. I am glad to be here. I am glad to be your neighbor. Let's win this thing.
I told you you'd want to stick around for that. I feel like it's chant time after that moving speech. How does that sound? Everyone ready to get up? If you'd like. Here we go. What we're going to say, we're going to demand. We're going to demand loudly. What do we want? Health care. I'm going to say, when do you want it? Now. So, Alana and I will role play.
All right.
Alana's the crowd. I'll be the leader.
Okay.
What do we want?
Healthcare.
When do we want it?
Now.
Are we ready? Okay. Let's make this loud and proud. What do we want?
Healthcare.
When do we want it?
Now.
What do we want?
Healthcare.
When do we want it?
Now.
What do we want?
Healthcare.
When do we want it?
Now.
What do we want?
Healthcare.
When do we want it?
Now.
Louder. What do we want?
Healthcare.
When do we want it?
Now.
What do we want?
Healthcare.
When do we want it?
Now.
So they can hear you up there, and so Danes can hear you across the street. Let's go. What do we want?
Healthcare.
When do we want it?
Now.
What do we want?
Healthcare.
When do we want it?
Now.
Last time, as loud as you can. What do we want?
Healthcare.
When do we want it? Now! All right. Education plus activism equals results. So get out there, do your part, call your members of Congress every day. Okay, next we have John Walker, who's going to join us. And John is a Vietnam veteran who now works with local groups such as Veterans for Peace here in Missoula, and he is going to talk today about the many healthcare needs, challenges, and struggles that veterans face. Thank you, John.
Thank you. They didn't tell me I was going to follow Denver. I'll keep this short. I was in the U.S. Army in Vietnam. We kept the planes flying that provided food and supplies to the combat soldiers and also reconnaissance missions. I want to share with you today a little bit about veterans health care and also personal health care that I've had experience with. After I got out of the Army, I met my wife and we moved to Missoula here and decided to start a family. And when our son Zach was born, he had ulcerative colitis and a blood disease, which was in none of our families. Since then, many Vietnam veterans' children and grandchildren have had illnesses and problems similar to our son. He did well on medication till he was about 13, and then he had to have his colon removed and his spleen removed. Our insurance company at that time, because we were both students at the University of Montana, denied a $10,000 operation for the spleen because it was a pre-existing illness. Well, we got through that, and thankfully, because the hospital would take monthly payments, we did not have to go bankrupt. About 15 years ago, I came down with cancer, and thanks to the Veterans Administration, they took care of that for me, and I've been satisfied with them ever since. You've heard a lot of problems with veterans care around the country. I want to say here in Missoula, it's excellent. The only downside is any major stuff we have to do, we have to drive to Helena to Fort Harrison, but there's also free vans that you can take over there if you need it. About 6 years ago, my son's autoimmune disease started attacking his small intestine, and at the same time he came down with leukemia. If he hadn't lived in Colorado, where they have insurance for starving artists and low-income people, he would have no insurance at all. If he had not died, he would have had to go bankrupt just to pay his share of his hospital bills. I guess in conclusion, I just want to say, and I promise to keep this short, I've got a friend in Coeur d'Alene who depends on the Veterans Health System. He left his legs in Vietnam, and they've taken care of him very well. I just came from a luncheon with a gentleman who's visiting us today that has no feet. He was also a veteran of Vietnam. He's given a show tonight about a movie that he made about peace in the United States and the world. It's at 7 o'clock, and don't ask me where it is, but it's up on Broadway, someplace not far from here, and you're all encouraged to come. I guess the last thing I would like to say is it really pisses me off that the rich in this country have shipped our jobs overseas and have left people to depend on the government to survive. And now they want to take this away from those people with their anti-Christian friends in Washington, D.C. Thank you.
Thank you for being here, John, and for speaking to us. Before our next speaker, Claire Charlo, comes up, I want to thank one of the major co-sponsors of our rally today, and that's our Medicare For All group. It's a group that started here in Missoula and essentially is educating and promoting a single-payer Medicare for All. If you're interested in learning more about that group, there's pamphlets over there, and they have a Facebook page called Medicare For All. Medicare For All Montana, so search for them on Facebook and you can get more information on how you can become involved with that. Yeah.
For designing the flyers and doing the logo that you all saw, hopefully on the Facebook page, Paul Kingsford from Kingsford Communications designed all of this for us free of cost. We're all volunteers, so that was an incredible contribution. We do have a donation bin over here, very small, modest bucket. So if you feel inclined, we have a lot of costs that we need to cover as a group. We're, of course, happy to give for this cause, but if you feel like contributing as well, that would be so appreciated. Thank you so much.
Yeah, because our organizations are very loose, we don't actually have bank accounts. It's just moms and others that are doing this. So if you want to contribute, that's great. So our next speaker is Claire Charlo. I've heard Claire speak before. She's pretty compelling, so I'm going to let Claire introduce herself.
Hesselhal, Lemlench Pesia, I'm so glad to be here. I'm really humbled to be here. Actually, every time I'm asked to speak, I'm always kind of amazed. I'm like, really? Why? But I have kind of been born into a family of activism. My father was in the Poor People's Movement. My grandparents on my mother's side were freedom riders back in the 50s. And so activism is in my blood. And I'm here today because this is a very important issue. All of these issues are important, whether it be racism, gender inequality, homophobia, you know, I mean, just we have so many issues at hand right now, and we're under attack. I have never seen an administration that has so much disdain for the poor people, and they do not have compassion. And it is time, it is our time. Yesterday I was at the Bernie rally, and it just reaffirmed who and what we have to be. We have all have to be our own Bernie. We have all have to step forward and fight for justice and equality. And right now, with the new health care proposal that passed the state floor, I'm terrified because my mother is not a tribal member. My mother does not have health care, and every day my siblings and I are afraid that something might happen to her. My daughter right now, she is not federally recognized here, she's recognized in Canada, but she will lose Medicaid under the Medicaid expansion grant. I am extremely afraid. I am a woman. I have a pre-existing condition. I had to have a cesarean section because my daughter was breech. I'm a survivor of domestic violence. 3 weeks ago, I had an abnormal mammogram, and I had to go through that turmoil. So yes, we do need our health care. It is a basic human right to have health care. Being able to go see a doctor, like Anna has said, is a human right, not just being able to afford one. I keep on hearing that health care is a luxury you should be able to pay for, and that is not correct. I've been into other countries where healthcare is just a right that you have, and I believe that America, we are so consumed with our corporations, I guess. Our corporations are people, and they are calling the shots in Congress right now, and we have got to take that power back, as Bernie said, and put it back into the hands of the people, because it's not mattering to anybody in Congress right now that we are a country that is divided. I see more and more every day. I see division, and it's appalling me. We all have to come together. We all have to be unified. I believe in solidarity. Every time I come down from Polson to speak, to be here with you, I always feel acceptance, I always feel warmth, and I always extend that back to you. You know, you are my people. The people that are fighting for justice are my people. The people that are fighting battles that I don't know, mental health battles, whether it be depression, whether it be coexisting, whether it be mental health or addiction. You know, in the last 2 weeks, our reservation has buried 4 tribal members under the age of 22 to suicide. And I just want to say this epidemic is not just to my reservation, it's national. It's a national-wide epidemic. And so I just want to say thank you all. And we have to stand together, and we have to support each other. We have to be there for each other because we're getting tired. And once someone gets tired, one of us has to step up and say, you take a break, I'll go forward, I'll do this, I'll go do that, you know. And sometimes Alana has had to cancel, and I said, that's fine, cancel, take care of your family. Sometimes we have to practice self-care. So I guess my message today is healthcare is a basic human right. We all deserve it, and be there for each other. Thank you.
Okay, we have one speaker left, but before that, I just want to emphasize something that Claire had said about really this legislation is an assault on women. being born a woman is not a pre-existing condition, and it should not be a hindrance to receiving health care, for women to have health care. This administration, and I will speak very bluntly, has been very clear that women are second-class citizens, or worse in their eyes. And this is yet one more instance of that, a blatant instance of that. It is imperative that we are all standing up for each other. It's going to be, if this legislation passes, which it won't because we have a say in it and we're going to do something about it, it will be devastating for women and for girls. One way, as we've said earlier, that you can do something about this is by voting. At our rally today, we asked all of the candidates in the special election to come join us. We gave them each a space and a table to come talk about their thoughts on the healthcare legislation. There was one candidate that was responsive, one candidate that showed up, and that candidate was Rob Quist. So he's not here personally, but he's here with a table and information. So if you want to know where he stands on these issues, you can find out. The other candidates, Mark Wicks, the Libertarian, and Greg Gianforte, there was not even a response, I believe, from Gianforte. So it's difficult for us to educate ourselves on where he stands and how he's going to vote on these real issues that affect us when he doesn't bother to show up. And I feel like we've already seen that from one of our other senators who refuses to speak to us. I don't know about you guys, but I don't really feel like we necessarily need a repeat of that. I'm saying this on behalf of Erin Erickson, not Missoula Rises, by the way. Or anyone else in this group, but it's imperative that you educate yourself on the people you're voting for. So like I said, if you're curious where Rob stands on these issues, he has a table here, his campaign does, and you can learn. And then I would really encourage you to go out and find 10 of your friends, or however many you want, find out if they voted, and educate them on where these candidates stand. Because whoever we vote in, that's going to be the single say on this legislation for our state. It's imperative that we're voting. It's imperative. So, that being said, I'd like to introduce now Pam. And before Pam starts talking, I have to give her a shout out. She has worked tirelessly in our community on the healthcare issues. And for this rally, she's put in a ton of time, and she always does. She's very involved with the Medicare For All group. Pam's a family nurse practitioner here in town, and I'm very pleased with your help, and we're excited to hear you.
Hi, everybody. Well, I really appreciate your being here on this beautiful Montana day where you could be anywhere else having fun. So thank you for your commitment and your interest in healthcare. Today, I just wanted to summarize a little bit about what we've heard from all the people who've gone before us about what we have now for our healthcare, what the Republican plan is for our healthcare, and what we could do in the future for our healthcare. So I'd like to start with the ACA, better known as Obamacare. Obamacare has changed our health in many ways. It has allowed children to stay on parents' insurance plans until they're 26 years old. It has required all plans that are offered to cover pre-existing conditions, so no one can be denied coverage. It has limited the amount that insurance companies can charge the elderly, smokers, and those people with pre-existing conditions over what they charge healthy adults. It requires all plans to cover 10 essential things. It requires them to cover hospitalization, drugs, pregnancy, pediatric services, emergency services, mental health care, rehabilitation services, lab and preventative services. It makes insurance portable. That is, that you can move from job to job and your insurance won't be lost. It gives states the option to expand Medicaid to 138% of poverty. And in Montana, as we've heard, that has increased coverage by 77,000 people, which is enormous. It closed Medicare Part D donut hole, which cut a lot of people off from getting their medications paid for, and ended up with a lot of people not taking their medications the appropriate way. So it has covered that gap and it no longer exists. It's made it so that there can be no limits in your lifetime on the coverage that you are given. So if you have more than one medical condition, you don't have to fear going into bankruptcy. In order to finance this plan, the ACA requires most U.S. citizens to be enrolled in the program, the healthy as well as those with health conditions. That gives us a broad financial base to help pay for those people who require treatment, and it helps keep premiums low. So it has been kind of the base for financing for healthcare for us. It also has given us subsidies to help pay for premiums, and those have been income-based and have helped people be able to buy insurance that have never had it before. So all of those things did not exist before the ACA came into place. People now love this. They want to keep those things. It isn't a perfect system, but it certainly has given us a lot more than we had in the past. The Republican plan that has just passed the House is called the American Health Care Act, or the AHCA. It has changed things quite a bit. It has repealed the requirement for everyone to enroll. So this cuts the money for the base to go to insurance companies to help pay for treatment. This will likely result in increased premiums, or it will increase your deductible and your co-pays. Either way, it's going to increase the amount of money that comes out of your pocket to get a plan. It repeals the premium and cost-sharing subsidies of the ACA, and it has put into place a flat tax that will decrease the amount of money that we all get to be able to pay for our premiums. This is going to affect people who are slightly above poverty level and the elderly the most. So this will definitely result in people losing coverage because they can't afford their premiums any longer. The AHCA encourages a health savings plan. These work really well for people who have money that they can take out of their monthly budget and put into savings. But there are many, many, many people in the United States that don't have enough money even to pay their monthly bills, let alone put some into savings. So it is a plan for the middle class. It isn't a plan for lower income folks. It also allows the states to apply for waivers to the rule that requires coverage of those essential 10 things, the pregnancy, mental health, drugs, etc. The waiver would also be able to apply to pre-existing conditions. This is basically where we were before the ACA came back in, so this is a backward step. The states who do get a waiver can set up high-risk pools for those with pre-existing conditions. And the Republicans tell us that this will be funded. Montana had high-risk pools before the ACA came in. The premiums were outrageously expensive and very few people could afford it. I had many patients who needed to have surgeries, couldn't afford to even pay a month of payments to be able to get that surgery. So it is not an affordable way to go. The AHCA does away with funding for the Prevention and Public Health Fund. This fund was made to figure out how to improve our health and to improve the quality of health care that we get. The fund has invested in research, in public health infrastructure, in immunizations, in screenings, and prevention programs. This program will be completely defunded with the new bill. This AHCA also caps the amount of money that's going to come to states for Medicaid expansion, which will severely limit eventually the people that can get Medicaid. It also stops people who are on Medicaid from choosing Planned Parenthood as their health provider for health screenings, health treatment, and birth control. And it is not that they pay Planned Parenthood now. It is that they are refusing to allow people on Medicaid to have that as a choice. So limits their choice. The Montana Budget and Accounting Office has estimated that over 141,000 Montanans will lose health coverage if this bill becomes law, and over 24 million people nationwide are going to lose their coverage. That's devastating. So when we start asking people what they want to have with healthcare, they want all of what they've got now with more things. So they want reasonable premiums, and premiums are going up, so that's an issue. They want policies that aren't tied to their job, so if they lose their job, they don't lose their health care. They want low co-pays and deductibles. They want reduced paperwork and administrative costs for their health care. They want better health outcomes. We rank now 37th in the world for things like infant mortality and the way that we treat chronic health issues. That's unacceptable for this country. They want healthcare costs that are the same as other countries in the industrialized nations. Right now, we pay 50 to 100% more money than all the other countries in the industrialized G10. We want more healthcare providers, and we want full coverage of everything. So that's a pretty tall list. How do we get it? Well, we could tweak the ACA. There are definitely things that can be done to improve it. We could require that all states expand Medicaid, and that would expand coverage for sure. We could allow people to buy insurance across state lines. So in those places where insurance companies are pulling out, the people would still have options. We could reinforce the requirement that everyone has to buy health insurance, which would give our base a little bit more money. We could allow states to get more involved by forming their own programs as long as they met the core requirements. But that still leaves people not covered. It does little to stop the rise of premium, and it does nothing to cut down on the administrative costs that this country pays in insurance. The government pays 25% of their healthcare costs in administrative costs because of all the insurance companies that they have to deal with. So what would work? Well, I think that we can look to a bunch of different places for this. Definitely we can look to Europe. Almost all of the countries in Europe have universal health care. There are many templates out there, but we can look inward to our own country. We have Medicare, we have Medicaid. Those programs we know work, we know they have low administrative costs, we know that they can provide good quality health care to everybody. So we can look to those, we can expand them, we can make it more so that it covers everybody. Such program in the United States would remove the burden from employees to have to provide health care to their employees. They would be able to take that money and they would be able to reinvest in their businesses, hire more people, or increase wages. There would be automatic enrollment for everybody. You would get born and you would be automatically enrolled. It could offer complete services, so everything you need is taken care of from the time you're born to the time you die. It would give still free choice of hospitals and doctors, just like we have now with Medicare and Medicaid. It would cover everyone in the country without spending any more money than we spend right now. It would slash administrative costs from 25% to 2.5%, which is what Medicare has at this point. It could be funded by a progressive tax that would be less per person out of your pocket than what you pay now for your premiums, your co-pays, and your deductibles. So, if you think that we need some changes to our health care in this country, I really encourage you to get active. Don't just come to a rally. Do all the things that everybody all day long has been saying. You need to vote what you believe. You need to get other people to know what is going on. You need to be writing letters and making phone calls on a regular basis. This is so important. This is the foundation of our country. It makes for healthy businesses. It makes for people who can be more productive, and it is something that we all have a right to. So please get out. We have people that have postcards for you to write, and we have sign-up sheets for you to get out and to educate others. So please go to our tables and take a look at everything, and I really, really thank you for coming today.
Thank you, Pam. That was the epitome of education. That was perfect. So a few things as we wrap up. There have actually been a few people that have come up to me during this rally and wanted to share their testimonials about how they have been affected by Medicaid. There's Will, and then there was one other person. So I think what we're gonna do, because we have Bob here that's gonna play music, is those people that want to give their testimonials, we're gonna put you at a table over here, and I would really encourage everyone to come talk to them. Is that okay with you? Okay, do you want to do that briefly? Sure. So I'm gonna let him do a testimonial real quick because it's important to hear from our community members. I'll let you do that quick and then I'll give my wrap up.
Thank you so much. Thank you to all the speakers. My name is William Harvey, Aaron, Denver, everybody, Pam that just spoke, Claire. It was just amazing, and everybody that showed up here to support this. You know, I am one of those 77,000 Montanans that had never had health insurance as an adult, and so being able to be enrolled in Medicaid opened so many doors for me. I'm also the executive director of Students for Sensible Drug Policy, so we work on a lot of issues related to not just the war on drugs as it pertains to illicit drugs, but also big pharmaceutical and big pharma's price gouging, big pharma's unwillingness, and their fight against anything that could cut into their profits, including cures. We know that this has been done. We know cures have been suppressed. We know that there is an assault on our bodies by what's being put into our soil, by what's being put into our vaccines, by what's being put into our food supply with glyphosate and the genetically modified organisms that have taken reign in Monsanto. What I wanted to do and why I wanted to come up here is I wanted to give you guys a plan B. In life, it's always good to have a plan B. And so not when, but if they take our Medicare, you know, and we'll struggle relentlessly to make sure that that does not come to fruition. But if they do that, it's always good to seize the day and take health into your own hands. And I brought some props up here to demonstrate how you can do that. One of the big things I'm about is I'm all about let food be thy medicine and let medicine be thy food. Really stressing a healthy diet that can prevent so many health travails, but also getting into natural herbs, which they're trying to suppress. The FDA report just came out, 1/3 of drugs approved by the Food and Drug Administration are toxic, are poisonous. That's been proven, that's been documented. I've got up here a couple herbs that help me live a healthy lifestyle. They're not covered by Medicaid, unfortunately. We need to fight to have Medicaid expanded to cover herbs and natural supplements that can keep people healthy. Right here is the strongest anti-inflammatory in the natural kingdom. This right here is called turmeric. I use it every day. This has been proven in numerous peer-reviewed studies that are being suppressed by Big Pharma to reduce cancer, inhibit cancer cell growth, and to help with myriad other concerns. I've also got in my hand right here milk thistle. Milk thistle is the strongest detoxifier of the human liver. Our livers are being bombarded on a day-to-day basis by what's in our diet, by what's being put in the food supply. We always need to be cognizant of what's in our food, but we also need to take steps to mitigate the damage, so to speak. Milk thistle is a detoxifier, it's a liver purifier. This will prevent the damage. Also take this if you're going out on the town for a night beforehand. It can inhibit alcohol-related damage. But I just wanted to let you know, there's numerous places here in town that offer herbs and herbal remedies to a lot of our health travails. Unfortunately, they're not covered by Medicaid. And we need to fight and we need to demand that they expand coverage. Another thing that we work on at Students for Sensible Drug Policy, we work on issues related to trying to expand harm reduction. Harm reduction is meeting addicts where they're at today. We have a place right here in Missoula that does that called the Open Aid Alliance. Unfortunately, none of the services that they provision to the people, over 1,500 drug-addicted individuals in our community, none of those services are covered by Medicaid. And we want to embrace harm reduction because studies show harm reduction works. Harm reduction keeps people alive. Harm reduction is not this judgy, abstinence-only paradigm that we have now for addiction treatment services. The Montana Chemical Dependency Center in Butte has a waiting list of over 3 months. And I find it ironic that in this state you have to commit a felony to get inpatient drug treatment services. So I'm being cut off, but I appreciate Aaron and I appreciate everybody that spoke, and I'm going a little too long, but I wanted to get that out there. Look into meadow sweet herbs, butterfly herbs, get down there and take the health into your own hands and seize the day.
Okay, thank you. So to wrap it up, I'm going to be real brief here because we have live music. Bob's going to play for us, and we have big Thai country Thai food over there if you want to enjoy some of that. But here's the things you're going to do. You're going to download Amplify on your phone, and you're going to start calling every day. You're going to ask 5 of your friends to download Amplify. If they don't have iPhones and they don't want to download an app, they're going to go to MissoulaRises.com and click on the National Actions link, and that will get you all the phone numbers and the scripts that you need. So you need to do that, and you need to pass it on to your friends so we can practice daily resistance, because this healthcare bill it's not inevitable. We can stop it if we want to, and we do want to. So on that note, let's enjoy the beautiful sunshine, live music, and food. Thanks everyone for sticking with us.